Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, GreyDM, and with me as always is Owen.
That's me.
So, Owen, what topic do you bring to the table this day?
I brought a topic that might interest you and some other of our listeners, and it's about some of the popular 2025 TTRPGs that are out right now, as well as a few that aren't as new, but may have kind of gone under the radar and people might want to hear about and learn to play.
Cool. Well, that sounds like an exciting thing to explore, so
Yeah.
by all means, teach us.
Well, if your group is ready to move beyond just D&D or Vampire and try something that's currently drawing attention across the hobby, here's some of the ideas where to start looking. These are real games with real systems, many of which are already in players' hands. You hear about how they work, how they're built, and why they might or might not be worth your time. So we're going to start out with pretty much the big kid on the block right now, and that is Daggerheart.
Yes.
And like I said, I brought the sheets, and Daggerheart, out of all of them, used more paper than the rest combined.
Yes. So I'm going to hold off a little bit. But...
So we'll go over the. I'm not getting heavy into mechanics here. I'm just gonna talk about who developed these, where they came from, and what things you might like about them. So, Daggerheart is published by Darrington Press, the game publishing arm of Critical Role Productions, launched in 2020. It's one of two RPGs that Darrington is developing, the other being the horror-themed Candela Obscura. What makes Daggerheart unique is that it wasn't designed as a 5e clone or expansion. It's a new standalone fantasy game with mechanics that reflect Critical Role's tone and pacing. It was officially released on May 20th, 2025 with a core box and rulebook totaling over 360 pages and 279 player cards. So there's a lot there.
It was a hefty box.
Yes, of course you have it already. At the core of Daggerheart's mechanical identity is its duality dice system. And this is something I'm finding is, they don't call it duality dice, but we're playing with it in the Star Wars RPG a little bit, and these theme dice, that seems to be a really common thing in a lot of games that are coming out right now. When you make a check, you roll two 12-sided dice, one for hope and one for fear. You add your modifiers to both, and the higher of the two determines success. But the die that wins also generates momentum. If hope wins, you gain hope points, which you can use to power abilities or trigger certain boons. If fear wins, the GM gains fear points, which they can spend to escalate tension in the scene, bringing in adversary abilities, complications, or sudden turns. This makes the act of rolling dice a narrative engine. Even a success can come with consequences, and even a failure can fuel future heroics, which we run into all the time in the Star Wars RPG. Success is rare, but hey, something happened. The game doesn't use initiative in the traditional sense. Instead, Daggerheart relies on a spotlight system which tracks whose turn it is through the use of tokens or just fluid narrative shifts. When a player takes an action, they're in the spotlight. When they're done, they can pass the spotlight to another player, or the GM can seize it by spending fear. This avoids the rigid number tracking approach of most initiative systems and supports a conversation-based playstyle. Combat and social interactions both follow the same resolution mechanic. 2d12 plus modifiers with fear and hope always a factor. Players can use tag team rolls once per session to combine their attacks with another character for larger cinematic results. Reactions and saves like dodging a falling rock or resisting a spell use the same system but don't generate hope or fear, which keeps reactive rolls from spiraling into narrative overload. Character creation involves choosing an origin like elf, human, golem, and so on, a class, and a community, a social and cultural anchor for your character. Rather than race or ancestry granting flat mechanical bonuses, the game focuses on what each of those elements means narratively. Each class has ability cards which can be activated with hope points or other conditions, giving characters clearly defined tools in the same way 4th edition or 5th edition did, but without the complex stat trees. Daggerheart's official actual play series, Age of Umbra, presents a darker, more rural tone, focused on tight-knit communities and grim decisions. The system supports this tone well, with minimal prep needed for each session and mechanics that naturally escalate drama. The hiring of Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, two longtime D&D designers, as creative and game directors for Darrington Press, also shows the company's investment in growing this into a long-term system. If your table values collaborative storytelling, consequence-heavy roles, and a rules-light approach to initiative and positioning, Daggerheart is worth your attention. It's currently available in retail and digital formats, and its SRD is open for free under a creator-friendly license.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think once we dive into it, our table will might likely have an opinion about this system, and I tend to think it's going to be a little off the mark for us. But I have a firm confidence in the team that built the system and that are running it, because they took 2 of the 3 people who designed 5th edition.
Yeah.
And those people are now heavily invested in the company. They did it on their own.
Let's just talk about how crazy that is, too.
Yeah, like for you to basically go and for you to have a company that owns an IP and is like a juggernaut.
It's the legendary IP of tabletop role-playing.
And not only that, not only is your IP the juggernaut, but you were the responsible for causing a revolution, or at least kicking off a revolution by listening to fans and going back and revamping your system and creating 5th edition, which, love it or hate it, was a juggernaut in pushing role-play. And of course, there's a lot of stuff going on that helped aid that. But this is the position you find yourself in. And then due to corporate jackassery, the people who made your game and drove its vision for 10 years are like, we're all going to retire.
Yeah.
That's bad enough. But then when 2 of them show up in
and
your rival
competitor, a direct competitor that was created simply because you were being a jackass.
Yeah. And then they're like, yeah, we just like this and we're going to start doing this.
Working for the company that basically drove your growth for the last 10 years.
Like, it literally brings me back to that chilling feeling of the working at a particular store and my boss coming in and saying, oh, train this guy to do your job.
Yeah.
Like, that's how bad that I'm like, I can't. Like, so like, I'm personally Chris Perkins, and he did all the Penny Arcade stuff.
Yeah, I know. If you guys haven't seen, look at some of Penny Arcade's early live playing. They started doing it before Critical Role did.
Like the OG.
Yes.
And back in 4th edition.
Yeah. And Chris Perkins DM'd several of those games. He is an amazing DM. Yeah. And he is the Wikipedia of D&D. Like, he has encyclopedic knowledge of everything that went on.
And if you get really interested, you can also go watch Dice Camera Action, which was his series, and it heavily crossed over into the Penny Arcade stuff, the Acquisitions Incorporated, and that's where he kind of got to do a little bit of his own stuff. And really, the only thing that happened was he got burned out.
Yeah.
And, by his own words, he was like, I've done this so much. And then he handed his position in the play stuff over to Jeremy Crawford, who was another member of the Trinity.
Right.
And Jeremy Crawford started running it with great effect, too, and doing fantastic. And to see the 2 of them come out in a Critical Role panel and be like, hey, guys, we're part of Darrington Press now. And I was like, you guys could walk out and start your own company.
Yeah, but you decided to go with them.
Yeah, and you decided that's...
Well, I mean, it's smart, because as many people might know who Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford are, unfortunately, more people know the entire cast of Critical Role. And on top of that, it's just like, oh, we've already got a willing group of people that want to invest, like, not money, but invest themselves into this. And we can pull on all of that, and they've already created that whole thing, and they're going to give us full reign. Like, it's our baby.
Yes. As far as everything I've heard, that company is like in that stage where you want to be, which is the growth stage, where they're like, hey, everything's working, just go do it. Go do the thing you need. Side little note here, I was looking for the next book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and I went to Barnes & Noble, and sitting on the shelf was a Darrington Press copy of Tusk Love, which was a made-up book that was made up on the spot in the Critical Role Season 2 campaign. And we've gotten to a point where some author made a smut book. Like a Harlequin romance about a half-orc like captain, and like it's literally the bonkers thing of being like that thing that the DM made up on the spot because of my inquiry of like what's the best-selling
became a thing
now exists in Barnes and Nobles across the world. That's the company that just won 2 people from
yes, like that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I cannot expect anything other than this system is going to fill. My opinion wise is I think we're going to see a split a little bit where Daggerheart is going to be the like kind of preeminent streaming live play thing because it lends itself to that.
Yeah.
And I think something more crunchy is going to start also developing that's going to kind of pull those other people who like more grid tactical, like they're going to start pulling away. It might be Pathfinder. Pathfinder might have another big resurgence. It's not like they went away, but like, you get what I mean? So I have a feeling that this is like 50%, but I think that's essentially 5th edition or 5.5 or 2004, 2024, is that what they call it now?
Yeah.
Is basically its momentum is splitting into like a couple different products now. And,
we might see an acquisition of
that's the joke, right? Like the joke is that 5 years down the road, Darrington Press is like, we now own the rights to D&D.
Yeah.
You're like,
wouldn't that be crazy? And what do you think they would do at that point? Do you think they would just roll all of the lore and everything into Daggerheart, or do you think they would try to make another D&D game?
No, I think if they were smart, if that happened, their whole thing would be to go do another 5th edition where they're like, okay, stop. Create it. Let it be its thing. Because so 10 years ago, the joke of like who would ever want to watch you play D&D was like, a thing. And I think Daggerheart, from what I understand, is built to be that game. And I don't think D&D is meant to be that game because you're supposed to play it with your friends and family. You're not supposed to watch somebody play it.
Right.
So I think if they owned it, they would want to make what it's supposed to be and let Daggerheart be the other thing that is meant for what its purpose is.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
But that's just my idea.
And as I printed out several character sheets from the different games that we have here, and the Daggerheart character sheet is, 11 pages?
Yeah, that is one. That's why I want when we do a formal review of it, I have a suspicion that parts of it might be over-engineered.
Yeah,
and it's just a bit much. But I don't want to say anything until we actually give it a run.
Right. All right, let's move on to the next one. The Cosmere role-playing game is the official TTRPG adaptation of Brandon Sanderson's interconnected fantasy universe. And for those of you that don't know, Brandon Sanderson is an author. He's done Mistborn, Stormlight Archive, very popular fantasy novels that are out there. It's co-produced by Brotherwise Games and Dragonsteel Entertainment, the company that manages Sanderson's intellectual properties. This game broke Kickstarter records, raising over $15 million from more than 55,000 backers, making it the most funded tabletop RPG of all time as of mid-2025. The game's release strategy is what its creator calls a living RPG. It's launching in waves, beginning with the Stormlight Archive, with Mistborn materials scheduled for 2026, and additional support for settings like Warbreaker and Elantris to come later. Its box set and retail products are scheduled to launch on October 29th, 2025. Mechanically, Cosmere RPG uses a D20-based system developed in-house. It's not 5e-based, though it shares some structural similarities. Character sheets are built around skills, talents, and access to magics that match the book's investiture systems. For example, if your character is a Surge Binder in the Stormlight setting, your powers are tied directly to how you use Stormlight and the oaths you've sworn. The game also features a plot die, a mechanic that can inject implications or a narrative twist during dramatic moments. It adds a layer of meta-narrative pressure and serves as a thematic echo of the Cosmere's fate and chaos motifs. Character creation involves choosing a calling, your profession or combat role, a cultural origin, and optional magical training if your character is invested. There's also a reputation system for social positioning in factions like the Radiants, the Ghostbloods, or regional houses, which provide non-combat leverage during intrigue scenes. The game emphasizes world fidelity. Stormlight's themes of honor, trauma, and sacrifice are deeply baked into the tone. However, this also means that players unfamiliar with the source material might need a primer. Thankfully, free starter rules are available online, and the Kickstarter campaign provided extensive lore summaries for each setting. Cosmere RPG is ideal for fans of the novels or groups looking for a tightly defined world with rich lore. For GMs, the main lift is learning the setting details, especially for Stormlight. But the reward is a system that makes players feel like they're part of a living epic. So when I printed that one off, I got really big vampire.
Yeah, looking at the character sheet, the first thing I was like, "Oh, this is weird," because half of it is basically White Wolf.
Yes.
And then they went down to a 3-tier system, which is kind of indicative of some of the, like, Besom and some of the other older series where they're kind of like everything gets pulled from a couple core stats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I missed this. I kind of regret that I didn't get on this, but like I'm sure we will pick it up and it'll be added to the
pile,
the ever-growing shelf, or the ever-growing the ever-growing bookshelf that is our RPGs. Brandon Sanderson is literally the academic who wrote the book on how to do magic systems.
Yes.
He has a detailed YouTube course that is filmed in him in college giving this course to creative writers. So, like, the thing that I hear is this is going to have one of possibly the most best
thought out,
implemented.
Yes.
You know, and it looks like it's going to be a bunch of them because he's got to do
it's from multiple books. Like, I'm really wondering how he's going to handle, like, Mistborn and stuff like that.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you're like, look, I'm going to pare it down to this, but everything grows from these core rules.
Yeah.
You're burning allomancy or you're combining it with the other form of it. But, like, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting. And I got to read this Stormlight. I never started it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. All right. We talked kind of about, it was mostly you talking about it the other day, but Legends in the Mist. Legends of the Mist is a narrative fantasy RPG published by Son of Oak Game Studio, best known for its City of Mist, a noir supernatural game that uses flexible tags and minimal stats. Legends in the Mist is a standalone game using a new version of the Mist engine. In January 2025, it was voted EN World's #1 most anticipated RPG, ahead of projects from major studios like Cubicle 7 and Darrington Press. Instead of stats, players build characters using themes like Warden of the Glade or Burdened Wanderer, and populate those themes with tags, descriptive words or phrases that define what a character can do. When you take an action, you gather relevant tags, count them up to get a power rating, and then roll 2d6 plus power against the difficulty. The result can be a full success, a partial success with consequences, or a miss. If the stakes are high, players can burn a tag to gain an automatic power boost, representing pushing past limits or sacrificing something important. The game is set in a grounded, rural fantasy world. Think folk tales, faded myths, old oaths, and forgotten places rather than epic wars or dungeon delving. The mechanics back that up. There are no classes or hit points. Instead, players track their growth and stress through evolving tags and themes. Equipment, for example, isn't just a sword, it's Father's Rusted Blade or Shard of the Old Kingdom. Legend in the Mist's most notable teaching tool is its learn as you play comic. It's a fully illustrated solo adventure that introduces the Myst engine step by step. Players make decisions, see what tags do, and understand power roles before they ever join a group. This makes it incredibly friendly to narrative-first groups, especially those that find the rulebook intimidating. The game is best suited for GMs and players who want long-form character development, moral tension, and evocative low magic settings. It doesn't hand you pre-made templates, it asks you to describe the story and then rewards that description with mechanical weight. So yeah, that's an example character sheet right there. And literally, it is just tags.
Yeah, it's super... It makes me think back to, what's the Fate?
Yeah.
Like the index card one that we did.
Mm-hmm.
You had to write like a single thing on there and like...
Yep.
That, yeah, it's got that kind of vibe of super rules light, heavy into narrative. So one of the things that we were talking about when we were kind of talking about developing an RPG of our own was that the concept of taking away like, oh, you found an iron sword and turning it into like everything should be connected to what it is.
Yeah.
Like, this is the sword I bought from a blacksmith and I take care of it. Mm-hmm. So this is my trusted blade.
Yes.
And that should mean something different because in a story, if you tell a story, whether it's novel or whatever, everything you mention serves a purpose. So like your trusted sword is trusted because you take well care of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so that means that somewhere in the story that's going to matter, whether it doesn't chip when the orc barbarian's axe does because you took care of it, or there's something where it holds to the very last second before breaking when you use it to pry open the door. Mm-hmm. That concept is now working its way into mechanics in a lot of these new games, and these people are just creatively coming up with very evocative ideas, and I personally love the payoff of that.
See, a game like that, it's kind of tangential to this whole thing, but it'd be interesting to have something that's like, yes, it's your trusted sword, and then you have someone that's like the tag wizard, and their thing is they can rearrange the letters in a tag, so it's like now it's your rusted sword.
No, that's an awesome little trip. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, like,
but like I remember when we were talking about our ideas for a game, that's something that we had talked about a little bit, was adding tags to things, and I thought that was really interesting. That to me it's strange that they went all in, like that is the game. Like I kind of just saw it as a mechanic that was tacked on to the whole thing.
Well, it's interesting. It's something we might get involved in a future podcast, but there are to go back to kind of nail this point, the point that we've talked about home is like the role-playing genre, the existence of it has only been around now for like 50 years.
Yeah.
So no one knows what is right and what is wrong. Mm-hmm. And so you have these kind of like these pathways that people are gravitating towards, and rules light story kind of driving is something. And this is clearly in that vein where this makes infinite more sense to a literary like degree than to a person who like studied like engineering and wants to build a complex character that can throw a knife to the moon, you know? And in this you're like, well, yeah, I just wrote down I can throw a knife to the moon. And you're like, no, but I have the stats that back up that I can exert the
man. This feels like GURPS all over again.
Yeah. Right?
So no, I absolutely get it. Like I was very intrigued when I was reading that, and I watched some people do the comic book playthrough, and it was really interesting to watch them play it. And I was just like, man, that is a brilliant way to teach people how to play a game.
Yeah. That's another thing I suspect is that some of these are going to find a lot. They're going to be used more often in different groups, especially younger groups.
Yeah, that was the other thing, is this could be used as a teaching aid very well.
Yeah, like you'd get kids, and then kids start remembering like, here's a list of things or a list of kind of aspects of my character, and how can these solve the problem? And that's so great for being nonviolent too.
Yeah.
You know, like I have a rope that ties things up. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the tie-up rope or whatever. And then I run into a situation like, but I have the tie-up rope, you know. And
well, what does that say? Mommy's tie-up rope. Oh, I don't want to use this.
Daddy's shaking his head and getting extremely uncomfortable.
Where did you find that rope? Mommy and Daddy's room? Well, that's Mommy's tie-up rope.
That rope goes back to where it is.
It smells funny. Okay, moving on. This one, unfortunately, don't have a printout for because it doesn't exist yet. Attack on Titan. So the Attack on Titan RPG was announced at Gen Con 2025 by Panini Comics in partnership with Need Games, a Milan-based TTRPG publisher known for titles like Broken Compass and the Italian edition of Household. The game does not yet have a public title or system description, but official statements emphasize that players will be able to write their own ending, implying a narrative sandbox rather than a canon replay experience. There's no SRD or mechanical documentation available yet, so no claim can be made about what the rules would look like. That said, the design challenge is obvious. How do you model omnidirectional movement, team-based combat, and frequent character death without overwhelming players? Titan fights are cinematic, fast, and brutally lethal. The setting also requires managing hierarchy and scarcity, elements that traditionally rely on narrative buy-in rather than strict rules. No public date for a playtest or retail release has been set, but based on Panini and Need Games' existing publishing history, it's likely that the final product will use an original or streamlined system, possibly adapting elements from their previous titles. For now, it's a high-visibility adaptation of a globally recognized IP. If the game lands well, it could serve as a major entry point for anime fans into the TTRPG hobby. And finally, out of the big ones, Root. Root, the role-playing game. It's published by Magpie Games in partnership with Letter Games, who created the original Root board game. It's powered by a modified Powered by the Apocalypse mechanics and released in full in 2022. It won a Silver ENnie Award for Best Game and a Gold ENnie for its Talon Hill Quick Start in 2023. In Root RPG, players take the role of vagabonds, animal outcasts wandering the forest, operating on the fringes of the forest's political factions, the authoritarian Marquis des Cats, the resurgent Erie Dynasty, and rebellious Woodland Alliance, and others. The narrative tone is closer to Watership Down than Redwall, but brutal politics under a cute mask. Mechanically, the game uses 2d6 plus stat rolls familiar to Powered by Apocalypse players. Each player has a playbook, such as the Scoundrel, Vagrant, or Chronicler, granting unique moves, advancement paths, and complications. Moves trigger based on fictional positioning, not declared actions. A roll of 10 plus is a clean success, 7 through 9 is a mixed success with a twist, and 6 or below lets the GM make a hard move. Faction reputations rise and fall based on player choices, and playbooks include specific prompts to generate bonds, debts, and entanglements with the forest powers. The game's unique contribution is the faction system. NPC factions are not just world flavor, they're mechanical entities that shift power on the map based on player influence and choices. This allows for stories about diplomacy, sabotage, and loyalty in a changing environment. Root is best for groups who want intrigue, power shifts, and morally gray play, all while avoiding tactical grid combat. The system encourages narrative flexibility, but supports players with clear mechanical outcomes, making it easier to run than it sounds. I want to play this game.
By all means.
Yeah.
Bring it to the table.
Yeah, I think it looks really interesting. I've watched a few groups that did some plays on it. Vantris is did a play on it. Yeah, it looks fun. I kind of want to try it out, look more into it.
I'm finding myself more and more a fan of when people like go, oh, look, these cute animals. And then they like put them in like, this is a dire political situation in which like backstabbing is, you're like, whoa, whoa. I love that.
Sir, I'm sorry to tell you, the ponies have revolted.
It's just, because it comes back to the Jaggerian book, because I read Leorn.
Yeah.
And that like the whole concept of like, if you guys have it, someday we'll go deep into this series, but there's a series by a writer named Stephen Brust. And one of the things that exists in that world is basically that the group of elves, like their households are very kind of like tied to an animal, often fictional. and they have like personality traits of that animal deeply ingrained in them. And like the latest one was basically a dog.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you model a dog, you know? And like, very clearly there's a lot of
Very
tropish
golden
ways,
retriever.
but like, yeah, exactly. Like this need, the brilliance of like, it's not just honor, it's the appearance of honor, and they need to be the one who does the right thing, or they're known as the one who does the right thing.
Yeah.
To where like in the culmination, he like pins his whole plan on that happening. And I was like, that's so smart. And I was like, I love seeing that in these kind of anamorphic animal ones where like, you're like, sure, this is a character. This is, they're on their own. Their like species only has a little bit to do with it. But at the same time, it's so much satisfying when the snake does eventually turn around and strike.
Yeah.
And you're like, he's like, what did you expect? I'm a snake. We should have saw. Like, anyway, it's
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying that one. So we got some honorable mentions here. These are games not necessarily new, but have been out for a little while, and maybe you want to check them out. So the Ultraviolet Grasslands is a post-apocalyptic science fantasy setting released originally in 2018 by Wizard Thief Fighter Studio, with a second edition published in 2023 in collaboration with Need Games. Designed by Luke Rijek, it's subtitled Psychedelic Metal Role-Playing, and it earned a Silver Ennie Award for Best Cover Art in 2020. The game is built as a surreal caravan journey across strange lands, from Violet City westward to the Black City, but with no enforced destination. Instead of traditional hex crawls, it uses a point crawl method. Your group jumps from one evocative locale to another, each richly described with story hooks drawn from random tables. The mechanics are system agnostic. Early versions used CCAT, Strength, Endurance, Agility, Charisma, Aura, Thought, while the second edition introduced a new rules engine called SDM, Synthetic Dream Machine. Critics highlight its dreamlike imagery, dusty caravan aesthetic, and bizarre encounters. Ghosts, living crystals, mind-controlled cats, making it deeply sensory in tone. Stu Horvath calls it a road trip game full of strange people and landscapes, and Forbes praised its psychedelic Oregon Trail vibe, where the stunning imagery and randomness drive play. This is a game standout for groups seeking evocative, wandering fantasy that's as much art piece as it is game. I thought this one was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Dead Friend, a game of necromancy. It's a 2-player ritualistic story game by Lucian Kahn, published by Hit Point Press originally in 2018 and reissued in 2023. It's built around a single necromantic ceremony. One player resurrects the other, guided by poetic prompts and physical elements like tarot cards, matches, salt, coins. There are no dice. Instead, drawing tarot cards directs the narrative, and the manual itself is framed as instructions for a ceremonial rite. The tone is deeply emotional and symbolic, not horror, even as it deals loosely with death and afterlife. The game was nominated for the 2019 Indie Game Developer Network Most Innovative Award. This is an intimate 2-player experience rich with ritualistic structure and symbolism, ideal for deep emotional exploration rather than heroic fantasy. I thought that one sounded kind of cool.
Interesting.
Spiral, The City Must Fall is a dark fantasy RPG from 2018 by indie publisher Rowan, Rook, and Descartes, designed by Grant Howitt and Chris Taylor. It flips the typical drow trope, or drow, I should say, it depends how you want to say it. Rather than being inherently evil in Spire, the drow are oppressed, enslaved, and now quietly rebelling. You play members of a secret society plotting to overthrow their elven overlords. The game uses the resistance system, where actions are resolved via dice pools, and failure leads to accruing stress in categories like blood, shadow, mind, silver, or reputation. These build into fallout, which produces consequences such as bleeding or exposure. Character creation involves picking a pre-rebellion role, guard, worker, assistant, and a class, knight, midwife, carrion priest, grounding each character in personal history and motivation. The setting and mechanics focus on intrigue, sabotage, and the fragility of rebellion. And there is Dread. Dread is a horror one-shot RPG designed by Epida Ravikal. I'm sorry if I just destroyed your name, and Nathaniel Barmore, published by The Impossible Dream in 2006. Instead of dice, the game uses a Jenga tower to resolve action. Every time a player attempts a tense action, they pull a block. If it falls, their character typically dies, or worse. The tower's increasing instability mimics mounting dread. Dread doesn't come with a fixed setting, depending on the GM's design. It can be slasher, horror, supernatural, or sci-fi. It's short, usually a single session, and highly cinematic. Dread is widely credited for elevating horror tension in RPGs. It has won multiple ENnie awards, and the Jenga as resolution mechanic was later adapted by Alex Roberts for the romance game Starcrossed. Critics, including Wired and Polygon, highlight how it introduces real physical tension to play, making it a go-to for horror nights and thematic one-shots.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Loot. Loot is a diceless RPG published by Gila RPGs and designed by Spencer Campbell, available in PDF since early 2025. It mimics a classic D&D adventure, exploration, combat, social play, but without any dice rolls. Instead, it uses a resource system involving approaches, force, flow, and focus. Players manage approach points based on their equipped loot. Each challenge depletes a point from the relevant approach. Characters are assumed to be competent, and failure isn't the mechanic. What wears down is your resource pool. In combat, action plays out on a 6x6 grid. Outside of combat, you narrate your approach. The more you lean on brute strength, force, smooth finesse, flow, or calculated planning, focus, the more you burn limited resources, creating tactical and narrative risk. A Polygon profile calls it a diceless D&D vibe, driven by loot and choices, and it's slated for print release later this year. Great for tables who want dungeon-style fantasy without cranky luck or dice rolls, and who enjoy resource management as narrative drama.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are some games people can look into, look forward to, decide to play. Let us know if you've played them, and let us know what you like and what you didn't like.
Yeah, I think every group eventually comes to the point where they need a little change of flavor.
Yeah, like, you can only play D&D for so long.
Yeah. Unless you're like the one-off people who can do it.
Yeah, I don't get that. It gets old.
But yeah, for the rest of us, don't feel restricted by what is established or what's popular or anything. All these systems basically try to tackle some story that their designers had in their head.
Yeah.
And they said, I want a better system to tell that story, which means that they all intrinsically have some value if that's the type of story you're trying to tell. So give it a shot. Like you said, like Owen said, tell us what you think about them or what you have, what we should be looking at. Too.
Yeah. If you've got suggestions, please let us know.
And as always, I hope just have fun with your friends around the table.
Yeah.
Right? So we'll talk to you guys later.
Goodbye.